Hey, what's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Maska, where we focus on helping guide you to have a business that produces consistent, positive cash flow. Today, we have with us Dr. Carla Fowler. Dr. Carla Fowler is an MD, PhD, and an elite executive coach. For the last decade, she has been a secret weapon for scores of CEOs and entrepreneurs. Carla's unique approach combines the latest research from performance science with timeless best practices to help top performers level up and achieve their goals. So that is Dr. Carla Fowler. Carla, what is going on today?
It is a beautiful morning in Tucson, Paul, and I'm really excited we're having this conversation.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for being here. This is definitely going to be one you guys want to tune into because I know, at least for me and my business, I know a lot of other business owners always kind of compare ourselves to sports teams and performance and all the things they do to be the best. And a lot of times we don't do that. So that's what we're going to dive into today, all of the expertise that Dr. Carla has. Before we get into that, though, how did this come to be? How did your whole entrepreneurial journey start really helping all these owners and leaders out there?
Yeah, it's a great question, Paul, because I certainly did not set out as I was going into my MD and my PhD training with this idea of that I was going to be an entrepreneur, that I was going to start a business or really a practice that was a business outside of medicine. And I always growing up was definitely kind of a math science nerd. Like I like solving problems. Maybe that's actually the better way to put it. Like, I don't think there was any chance I was going to become like a mathematician academic, but, and I think also some of the problems that were the most interesting to me were like people and sort of performance problems. Like if someone wanted to be good at something, like how is it that you set out to do that? Whether that was in the athletic realm or whether it was at school or even like in social circles. Like I was sort of fascinated by, you're growing up, going through middle school, all the awkwardness, like, oh, how do groups of people form? What are the power structures in those? So always pretty interested in that stuff. And I think took a medical pathway because for me, the idea of being able to use scientific problem solving to really help people was pretty appealing. And I very much enjoyed a lot of the learning I did during getting my MD. Like it's one of those unique career paths where at a pretty young age, they let you talk about pretty high stakes decision making with people. Usually we don't get to do that in a lot of job settings until we become the owner or until we, I don't know, you make VP, or director, something like that, right? And but in medicine, you actually have to learn how to do that and do that well pretty early. And so if there's a sense of foreshadowing here, it's intentional because I think what I ultimately realized as I was getting out into the residency part of things was that I really loved sort of thinking critically about problems. And I very much liked working with people around their decision making, behavior change, how to work towards the goals they wanted. But I realized that I wanted to do it on a much broader spectrum than just within a medical practice. And so I also really liked, and I suspect maybe some of the audience can resonate with this, the idea of getting to actually run and have the autonomy of my own thing. That there are wonderful parts about being in a system, whether that's a corporate system or the medical system. There's a lot of the path laid out, but you also don't have the opportunity to have the autonomy that when you are leading a business, when you are thinking about it, you certainly have all the weight of the responsibility, but you also have the chance to do some life design to really think about not just like having the business, but also to say, how do I want that to fit into my life? And I think I definitely felt that. And so took a really big leap, like let my program know I was going to finish the year, but not return. And decided to build a practice that was behavioral, but certainly it was not a therapy practice. It was not a psychological practice per se. And that coaching was really the realm in which that fit. So I definitely took my science background and decided that that area of performance science, all the science we have about strategy and our mindsets and how do we execute in the best ways, like productivity, all of these things that sort of make that mix of human performance. I want to use that science and really connect leaders to it so that they could use it, apply it, and go after their goals. So that's kind of a long story, but how I ended up starting my executive coaching practice 11 years ago. Definitely, no one knew me in that field, so I was definitely starting at zero. And I've built the practice to today, and learned a lot. Had to go through a lot of my own lessons along the way. And I'm excited to talk about all sorts of whether it's mistakes we make or principles that help. Totally excited to talk about those.
Awesome. That is rather impressive to go through even just the process to get into medical school. And then you're like, no, this isn't for me. So kudos to you, because I know there's plenty of people out there listening to this that be like, they might have their business on the side and they're like, I really want to quit my job, but I don't know if I can do it. Like you were all in, not just from a time standpoint, but from a financial standpoint, all the things you did. And then you're just like, no, this ain't for me. I'm out. So kudos to you. That's amazing. Let's dive into all of your expertise, the performance science, getting all our listeners out there to be better leaders, better strategists, better owners, and help them perform at a higher level. So you've been doing this for 11 years now. You have seen a lot of things, and you know, if I had to guess, what sets apart those really high performers with the ordinary Joe. What are some things like traits, things that you've seen, picked up, learned about that our listeners could take with them and be like, oh, that's how they do that?
Yeah. Okay. So I think one of the biggest things, and it's great because we can do a little bit of myth busting, is well, there are certainly people out there who don't know how to work very hard. What I would say is I suspect most of your listenership, everyone, they are working pretty hard. Work ethic, that discipline, that desire to make your business go, that is all there. And so one of the interesting things when I really look at performance that is a little counterintuitive is it definitely isn't always about working harder. And one of the key things that can be really difficult is actually to say, where do I need to take a step back and basically not do some work in order to allow me to do some thinking, planning, and focusing. In other words, number one, to figure out and continually check in with, what is it I want to have happen? Another way to think of this is what is my goal? But there's so much literature about goals out there. Some people love them, some people hate them. My point is always just, it's important to ask yourself, what do I want? If I'm building a business, what is it I want out of this? And to keep checking in with that question. It's not a kind of one and done sort of thing. And that takes time. It's not the kind of thing that can just happen as we're racing to put out one fire and another. The other thing that is important to be thinking about with this is we need to think about what we want. We also need to think about what is actually most important to drive us towards that. And usually, almost certainly, that involves not doing everything you can think of. So this idea of trying to do it all actually ends up hurting us. And so the performance principle, to sum all this up, I had to come up with a principle. So I call this brutal focus. And what brutal focus actually looks like is saying, I need to take some time when I'm not working, when I'm not actually doing tasks, doing things, to check in with myself and spend a little bit of time saying, what do I think at this moment is what I'm building towards? And actually try to put some of that into words. You can either, if you're a talker, you can talk out loud in a voice memo to yourself. If you like to journal, you can write it down on a Post-it note. But trying to put some words to that allows our brains to really process in a different way than it does when we're just kind of dreaming and floating along and kind of keeping it in our brains. And then the second piece of brutal focus is saying, I'm going to acknowledge I'm not going to do it all. And so then my power comes from selecting what I will choose to use my time for and the things I'm willing to either set aside for later, choose to not do it all, maybe hire out. But even that is a form of doing it, right? You're spending some resources on it. And this is counterintuitive because often when we have a goal and we are good at hard work and when we are disciplined, which are precursors for high performance, like we really over-index on that and we don't give ourselves any time to focus to make our work better.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so true because if you look at anybody who starts a business, initially you do like that's what got us to go there is like we have to do everything and we've got to be a hard charge and we can't give up. We do all that. But then eventually that's like the biggest kryptonite because now it's like, okay, now we can't do that to actually get to where we want to go. So it's a constant battle, but I love like, a lot of things, but like the thinking time, it makes me think of for anybody out there listening, the book called The Road Less Stupid. And he talks about having thinking time every day because to your point, it reminds me of like school or you're at a conference and they're like, all right, we're going to give you 5 minutes to brainstorm whatever. And like for the first 2 minutes, you're just like kind of sitting there thinking, you might write down a little bit. And then by minute 5, you're like, man, time's already up and you're just going because it does take time for our brains to open up and we start shutting off and stop thinking about the 10 fires we got to put out and do all the other things to have that time. It's just really hard to do because I'm just like everybody else. It's like, no, I need to do that. I need to do versus sometimes you almost feel guilty of like not doing. So
right. And I am here to absolve people of the guilt and to just say, this is actually one of the most important things that really can take your performance level up another level is like saying, I need that time to think, to plan, to organize, and to reorient and make sure I have some clarity. And like, a great example of some of the insights that might come out of that time that really make things better for your business could be, for example, I've worked with clients who were like sort of trying to like, business is good. This was a good thing for them, like lots of interest coming in, but they were just burning out, like trying to meet all the demand. And we spent some time just thinking about it and they spent some time thinking about it and they started to recognize a pattern of like, there were some clients that were just not good clients. Like the amount of effort that was getting spent to service that small percentage of clients was like way more than like the return those clients were producing. And like this was an insight that came out of their thinking time when they asked themselves like, well, what is most important? And they were like, well, I actually don't have to serve every client. I just need to have enough of like coming in that are efficient enough or the margin's good enough that like I can build to this scale. And that was what freed them up to say, I'm going to stop servicing, this particular niche, or I can identify like and qualify a little bit who might not be the best clients for just the way my business is set up. So again, we don't know when we're going to get those insights, but if we create some space for them, like they do come over time.
For sure. And I mean, I can relate to that. Owning businesses in the trades, a lot of times, like a lot of people just say, well, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. You got to deal with the general contractors. You got to deal with the remodelers. And to your point, you don't. Like you can build your business on the people you enjoy working with. If you love working for general contractors, cool, go do it. But if you just want to work with homeowners, then build your business to just work with homeowners and be a service business for your homeowners. But a lot of times we're talking to other people in the industry and they'll tell us, well, Carla, you don't know. That's just the way it is. And that's squashed so many dreams. It frustrates me. So moving on to like, that's a great, awesome first tip. Everybody out there, y'all need some thinking time. What are some of the biggest, so that's what we need to start doing. What are some of the things that we are doing that we shouldn't be doing? Some of the biggest mistakes that we need to take it to the next level. So we're going to go do this. And then we realize, probably shouldn't have done that.
Great question. Okay. One top mistake that I see is often we think knowing something is the same as doing the thing. We all do this. And the challenge with this, often we think that there's like some silver bullet. We think there's some solution. So either we know a thing, and so we think we're doing it, but we're actually not doing it, or we're continually looking for some solution. We're like, there's a hack out there. There's something everyone else knows that I don't know that would just solve this. Instead of, and so we're sort of spinning our wheels on that instead of actually taking an effective tool or habit or thing and actually just getting started on it and teaching ourselves how to do it consistently. So a great example of this is like training people takes time. And there are some good tools one can use. Like, Paul, I feel like I heard this came up on one of your episodes, like use your training and make a training video while you're on an iPhone, like while you're doing the training. Like there's great tools for that. But in the end, like as you're teaching people like how to come on board with your business, it just takes time. There's like, it is rare that you can hire a person who shows up on day one and can read your mind and knows exactly what you and your business and your customers need. And so these are things where I recommend what I call like my 90-90-90 perspective. And this is anytime you're trying to start something new, ask yourself, am I waiting around for a silver bullet, or do I actually know what to do and like how I could get started on this? Because a lot of the learning takes place while you are actually doing it. And that it's not that you're going to figure it all out and perfectly orchestrate it before you start. And then you're going to start and it's just going to go perfectly and seamlessly. Like most businesses, it's just a little more messy than that. And so the 90-90-90 perspective, I look at this and I say, as you're starting into something, there are many ways it could be successful and that you could ultimately sort it out. But there are actually only a few places where we fail in performance. And so the first 90 refers to the fact that one of the ways we fail is like 90% of the time we just don't start. We could start today, but we don't start today on that thing that would help improve how the business is going, not maybe immediately, but is needs to happen for it to scale, for us to free up more time for ourselves. So that's the first place we all fail. We don't just get started, as messy and imperfect as it is. So identifying what those first steps would look like and just doing them. All right. The second 90, where we can fail. And this is, so we got started, but then like 90% of the time, we don't keep going with it. It might be like we tried to delegate off some things to someone else and it didn't go very well on the first, like we did it for about a week. And then we're like, okay, I'm just going to take that task back. Like like they can't do it. And the second 90 is that we have to keep going with something. There's a certain period of time where we're just like getting the habit of it, of sort of saying, I just need to gather some more data about how this is going. And that is going to require that I do it more times than just twice. So that's that second 90. And then the third 90 is that, okay, so let's say we keep going. One of the things we need to know is that if we've gotten the habit and it's sort of going okay, what we don't want to do is just stick with that and say, well, this is as good as it could get. So eventually we do want to iterate and improve. And so that third 90 is to say, all right, we've sort of built something that's kind of working. And then often we just leave it. And we're like, well, that's as good as it's going to get. Instead of saying, all right, now can I improve it? Could I learn about this thing? Could I talk to some other people to figure out how who are pretty good at this? Like, or to, talk to some colleagues or some other business owners about their training techniques, or how they're doing the hiring, but like after you've established that this is a thing you're doing, then you can start to say, how could I improve this? And the reason I actually leave that for the third 90 and why there is a second 90 in the middle is because if we try and improve and perfect things too soon, we often just get super discouraged, and it kind of goes back into like category one of like, all right, we're just not doing that, or I'm taking that task back. Or so this is the 90-90-90 perspective, which is there's only a few ways that we actually fail. But often we have a lot of the knowledge we need to improve something. And the key is we need to get started, keep going, like don't stop, and then work to improve and iterate it.
Love it. That is phenomenal insight and super simple, guys. I mean, if you do the math, me being a math person, like you do those three things, you're in the top 1% of everybody in the world, because we've all been there. We don't start something and we always say, well, when I get there, or once we as a company do this, we're always just kicking the can down the road. And to your point, training, when we're growing a team, a lot of times we're like, well, I just need one more really good hire that I don't have to train, and then I'll start training everybody. But to your point, like, why don't we just start now? Because then we keep kicking that can, and then we look back, and like one of my favorite sayings is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. If we just started training day one, we'd be so much further ahead instead of always looking for that silver bullet and then, not keep going. It's really easy to, you go to the gym for 3 weeks. You're like, well, I'm not a bodybuilder. So it doesn't work. I'm out. I quit. Gym's not for me. We'll make every excuse. Diets aren't, whatever it is. But like, you got to build that habit before. And to your point, once we build that habit, we have a lot more knowledge to then be able to improve. We're a lot more immersed in it. Now we know what to look for to get better, but we don't know what to look for until it's actually a habit. If you're going to the gym, eventually you're like, okay, now I know I need to go work on this, because now you've established a lot more knowledge, experience, all that good stuff. So that is phenomenal. Everybody out there, 90-90-90, get started, keep going, and then improve. So let's kind of look at, so that's phenomenal. That's amazing. I think anybody out there listening, if you implement this today, you're going to start seeing results, not immediately. But once you do it, you'll be glad you started. So what are some of the secret tools that you have? Someone comes to you with problems, someone comes to you with a new, you're like, you know what? I do have that secret tool, or I do have something for you, and you can accelerate, and kind of narrow that gap and get them to where they want to go quicker.
Oh, this is the one thing that I come back to again and again that punches above its weight. And particularly when you are running businesses where there's a lot of orchestrating of schedules, making sure people are at particular sites or at different times. And then of course, schedules change, so can be fluid. We often want to feel a sense of control. It's part of what makes our brains feel happy as human beings. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like to feel out of control. Of course, control is an illusion, but it's an important illusion. And one of the ways that we can really have a sense of control, even if, of course, there are things that will impact us that we couldn't see coming or predict, is if we can be intentional with our time. And I have found that my one secret tool that I end up talking about with almost everyone is having some planning time. That even like a half an hour of time to plan and look a few weeks ahead, both with what's coming up, what needs to be coming up. Like, for example, if you're like, we need to start booking into, the next month or two, that to get our brains oriented and to take a step back, see the whole picture in terms of the logistics. I know earlier we were talking about having some time to think about what you want, what might be most important. This is much more operational. It's much more logistical, but taking some time to look at the week ahead and ask yourself, is it realistic? To look a couple weeks ahead and say, okay, how are things shaping up so that I can build realistic weeks going forwards? So you're basically setting yourself up for success and proactively acknowledging if things are evolving in a way where you could still improve them if you communicate, right? Like if you can proactively reach out, whether that's to needing some extra employees to come on for extra work, or even if it's around communicating with your customers to, change plans if plans need to get changed. This is all stuff that works much better proactively than like last minute. And it's part of how you set up owning a business to feel less like you are at the whim of the call that happens last minute. Now, that's not to say you're not going to take the calls when they come in, whenever they come in. But when you can set things up for success, think a little bit about what margin is needed, even as you have to adapt and shift things, which you will. Planning time does not mean that the universe then exists at your will. But what it does is it gives you the ability to actually say, what do I think we can accomplish, and have a much higher success rate at accomplishing that, as well as saying that many more things can go to plan because you had a plan, and other things will move, but it is a much smaller fraction of them. And I call this a mental health exercise. And so many people might not connect the things, but I have found that much of what makes people feel differently when they're owning their own business and when it's sort of crazy, they feel better when they have even 30 minutes to do this exercise once a week, to set the stage, even if they're going to have to improvise, even if they're going to have to be agile later, that generally their mental wellness is much higher and their sense of having control is much higher. So that is like the sort of unsung hero of I think sort of mental wellness as a business owner is like giving yourself that space.
I could not agree more. So if you guys are watching, this is my weekly schedule. I do this every Friday because, to Carla's point, when we're proactive versus reactive, we can get ahead of the game. We can foresee problems before they become problems, before putting out fires and being all reactive, because we can probably control a lot more of our schedule than we think if we do that. Otherwise, if we just wake up Monday morning, like, I don't know, what am I doing today? And then it's like, boom, fighting fire, boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden it's 5 o'clock.
Run.
All of a sudden it's Friday and you're like, I don't know what happened this week, but I survived. And we get in that survival trap of we're just trying to make it through the day, trying to make it through the week. And for anybody out there, if you haven't read the book, I recommend, kind of along these lines, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. He talks a lot about it too, just building the perfect week and taking control of that and building, hey, this day we do this day we do this. And every business is different. But when you can at least craft your ideal week, and that, to take it to the next level, that lines up with your bigger vision, life is a lot less stressful. Business ownership's a lot less stressful. It also, what I found, allows me then to have the ability to put out fires when they do come up, because I already know what's going to, I already know what rocks are kind of in the day. And when a problem comes up, it's like, oh, no problem. I got time to take care of that because I was proactive the Friday before. So phenomenal. Another great piece of advice for everybody out there. Take 30 minutes on a Friday, take 30 minutes on a Saturday or a Sunday, whenever it is before the week starts. Yeah. I do mine Friday just so I don't have to worry about it on the weekend. And it kind of allows me to turn my brain off Friday when work's over. I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing next week. Now let's go enjoy the weekend. With all the things we've talked about, Dr. Carla, we're starting to put a bow on this conversation and wrap it up. We've talked about some of the mistakes. We've talked about some of the things we can do. If you could pick just one thing our listener could do within the next 24 hours to start moving forward in their desire to get to where they want to go, be a better leader, be a better owner, what one thing would you pick them out just to start building that momentum?
I would pick, it's sort of a combo thing. I would take 10 minutes, right now or whatever, sometime in the next 24 hours, take 10 minutes, think about one thing that has been would make everything easier. You could think about this as something on your leverage list, which is a concept I love. It's the idea of not your to-do list of all the stuff to do. Leverage list is this list of what things, when you do them, eliminate work for you ongoing into the future. So pick something that you want to start. So now we're saying it's that thing you want to do 90, 90, 90 on. And block, pick a time in your calendar. Try to be realistic. Don't put it in the thick of your worst day this week, but something you think you actually have a reasonable expectation that you could block the time. and that the agenda for that time you block, maybe it's half an hour, is basically to like identify the steps of getting started on that thing and like take the first step. So the goal today is it's a sort of a planning task and then identifying what the issue is. You're going to put it on your calendar and you're going to get it going this week. You're going to do the first 90 this week.
Perfect. And then the week after that, keep going.
Exactly.
Dr. Carla Fowler, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your journey and providing a ton of actionable advice for all the blue collar business owners out there as we continue our journey to prosperity. Before we let you go, though, and sign off, where can our listeners go to keep in touch with you, learn more about everything you do? What's the best way for them to find you?
Awesome. Two great places to keep in touch. I'm on LinkedIn at Carla-Fowler. So feel free to send me a message and connect there. And then if you want to learn more about my coaching practice, and also I've got like lots of great content up on my media page that you can listen to for free. My website, so www.thaxa.com. And so that's the second good place. Yeah, look forward to connecting with people.
Awesome, guys. Go to thaxa.com, THAXA, to learn more, consume more content, and most importantly, once you do, take action on that. Carla, thanks again for coming on the show today. Really appreciate your time.
You are so welcome, Paul. This is great.
And before you head out, if you are ready to have a business that produces consistent positive cash flow so that you can have a financially healthy business and achieve your personal goals, let's make it happen. Head on over to thebluecollaradvisors.com/call to book a free financial assessment of your business. I will dive into the financials of your business, take a look at what's going on, find any red flags as well as opportunities that you have in your business. Let's make it happen. Again, thebluecollaradvisors.com/call. Until next time, remember, what got you here won't get you there. If you're ready for different results, it's time to start doing things differently.